Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz, continuing on with our AFL preseason reviews. We've got Geelong and Essendon now. The Cats beating the Bombers beating the Cats 17-2, 104 to 12, 11-83. And we have a special guest to talk all about it. It's Joven, last year's Supercoach winner. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm very well. Thanks, Swizz. Thanks for having me on. Keen to talk about my Cats, even though they went down, but I wouldn't expect Essendon to kick 17 goals to every game anyway, so not too worried about what it holds for the season ahead.
No, I like the fact that it's given the Bomber supporters hope, and they're out there lining up for grand final tickets now, and they think that everything's rosy and they're just going to come crashing down in round zero. But I probably get too much joy about talking about that. But yeah, your boys Geelong, I think it's going to be another big season ahead, and yeah, there's always a lot to talk about with them. But before we jump into that, as always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular YouTube, Spotify. Get in touch with us via X, Supercoach Insider 100, or Swizz26 for me directly. All right, the Cats, mate. We'll kick off with them. Just business as usual. The three and a bit quarters, and I feel like there's a bit of resting there leading up to the round zero match. Is that sort of how you saw it?
Yeah, they just did what they needed to do. Pretty professionally outfit. I mean, Chris Scott would have had, and the coaching staff, they would have had their plans for what this game was going to look like, and it panned out pretty well for them. I think they'll be pretty happy with what happened in this one.
Yeah, for the Cats these days, it's just blowing out cobwebs this time of the year and just making sure they don't get through with too many injuries. Now, I will put a massive asterisk for people watching this. At time of recording, round zero is going ahead, Brisbane versus Geelong on the Thursday night. Depending on when you're watching this and depending on what the AFL releases over the next few days, there is the biggest hurricane heading for Brisbane in the history of hurricanes for that area. So at the moment, the AFL said is they are planning to put this game ahead no matter what. I personally think that's a silly decision because you don't know what's going to happen leading into the game. You're potentially locking out fans because they might not be able to get to the game. There could be public transport issues. You want a full crowd. And yeah, you can get bad weather on any game, but this is kind of a unique situation. So I hope common sense comes to prevail here. And for us super coaches, it gets moved to round 3 because this completely changes our whole discussion around Geelong. But at the moment, we're going ahead with Geelong missing that round 3 and playing in round 0. Any thoughts on that, mate?
Well, yeah, I'm based in Canberra, but I've actually got tickets to the game, so I'm supposed to be flying up on the Thursday. So I'm hoping this forecast takes a turn. But the way it's looking at the moment, I'm worried about even catching my flight, let alone the footy. So I think it seems to be getting worse and worse. And if I had to probably place a bet at this stage, I'd say the game is probably trending towards not going ahead, or being. It could be a very interesting game for Supercoach anyway. If these conditions are even half as bad as it looks like being, it'll be a mess. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen.
If you are watching this podcast with Joven and I on Monday, right now you're probably looking ahead and waiting for the news to happen because some of the Geelong players are flying up and staff are flying up on the Tuesday. So they need to know by then what's going on. If you've tuned in here and it's Tuesday or Wednesday, you probably already know what's going on. But yeah, it's I'm no weather person. We've gone through this many times with the BBL podcasts, and I have got a few wrong before. But I think there is some risk there, and you'd hope the AFL, well, I'm sure they are, but coming up with different backup policies. But yeah, you've got to think even with lightning these days, games are delayed. They've got to go off for, it's half an hour plus 40, another 15 minutes for warm up and everything like that. So if there is any indication that, this could be just lightning all night, and we know Southeast Queensland, when they get hit by thunderstorms, they get hit pretty bad. No different to why we don't play footy in the territory at this time of the year. So yeah, I think there needs to be some serious looks at that, and not just being biased from a super coach perspective, because yeah, some of these players we'll talk about, if these guys didn't have an early bye, geez, my team would be stacked with Brisbane and Geelong players.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna change a lot of things. I mean, round 0 was already going to change a lot of things. I remember last year, like my team was completely different to pre round 0 to after round 0. But yeah, if some of these guys, I think it definitely just unlocks the premiums and those more expensive mid prices a lot more. It makes me a lot more interested in picking them, knowing that they get the full quota of games as any other premium. And there are some good options throughout both these teams. So yeah, just keep an ear out for what the AFL decides to do, but big Supercoach ramifications, I think.
Yeah. All right. We'll start with the one player that I do have my Geelong in my team who is from Geelong, because I've said this a lot. Most of the cats that I want to get in is unfortunately after their second bye, which happens to be the last bye. And the reason for that is Geelong have been pretty well gifted with their run home, especially playing my boys twice, who probably be running our legs there. We'll probably have no fit men and they'll be asking me to have a run around. So if I could load up on 23 cats by that time of the season, I would. But from a starting point of view, the young fellow, Mitch Nivet, Supercoach Mama, former winner, has been big on him from day dot. She always says, who have they got on the posters when they go to the family day? Who's there? And Mitchy Nivet was the guy this year. And from a footy perspective, you can see why. The 22 touches, looked really good inside. Contested possessions, he had 10 of them. And did everything to say this guy is, if not your M9, potentially even an M8.
Yeah, it just looks a lot better as well to how he has in previous years. I mean, Geelong have talked him up as he's had a big preseason. They're saying he's sort of, trying to fill in a sort of a Joel Corey mold. Not going to be the greatest midfielder or, a Brownlow threat or anything like that, but very solid, gets the job done. He's got a good role in that Geelong midfield. It seems like, we've seen that in both preseason games now. And yeah, at his price, I mean, he's a rookie, so we're not going to expect him to score hundreds. But if he's getting the big CBAs like he had in this game, and he's around the ball, I think definitely one to consider starting on field in that role.
Yeah, surprisingly, only 33%, a bit lower than even Langford when we got together for the Melbourne and Fremantle show. I would expect that to kind of raise because Nevitt at 149 just to me seems a no-brainer. Yes, he's got that early buy, but rookie, who cares? And you've got the extra midfield spot too. So I would expect his ownership to increase because we sort of don't know what's sort of going on with Bailey Smith at the moment and his fitness. He should be there. So yes, there might be a little bit of a drop off, but in saying that, you'll still be part of that 18 and 20, that 22. I don't see him as being in the sub risk compared to some of the other players that the Cats have there. And the other part, and we won't go into much detail, but there's a Geelong player there who he might have some issues off field, and who was part of that best 22 who might not be there for a significant amount of time. We don't sort of know. So without mentioning it too much, I think that just opens up more game time for Nevitt.
Yeah, there's an opportunity there for him if players miss. But even if the full quota is back, I think he's in their plans and he's still young. And Geelong are sort of looking towards the future as well as they're going to have another crack this year with Dangerfield and Cameron, but Nevitt is in their future plans, and I think they'll play him CBAs regardless of who's available.
Yeah, for sure. So just get him in. The unfortunate one was who was in 7% of teams is Connor O'Sullivan, because I thought he'd been looking good up until that preseason, but up to that moment, and then unfortunately just didn't get the opportunity to show what he's done. And obviously Geelong bringing players back and full strength does put him further down. Again, we've talked about downgrade options in the Freo and Melbourne podcast. I feel like that's a potential situation there. If there's a couple of injuries throughout the year, Connor will probably get a longer opportunity, but for now, I'd be crossing him off your starting lists.
Yeah, he impressed me quite a lot in their unofficial game against Hawthorn. I thought he looked very good. He's filled out a bit. He just looks a bit more confident. But yeah, it seems like he's sort of vying for that third tall defender with Jake Kolodjasny. And so it's not the greatest job security for him at the moment. And we saw only 40% of game time. So he's probably not really that safe to pick. And if someone goes down, if an injury happens, he's definitely got the ability and he's rated very highly. But just after this one, probably not going to start him.
Yeah, for sure. They've got a couple of mid-price options. The big one is Sam De Koning. Now, what Geelong does long-term with their ruck situation will be interesting. We know Stanley is still on their list. And that's where a little bit of the issue comes in because, with no Conway there, kind of what do they do? All the talk what I've heard from people is Stanley might be primed to go play the Melbourne game, just because they don't want to feed De Conning to the Wolves. It's a bit different if he's playing against his brother, Timmy English, guys who aren't going to bully him, but he can still sort of get around the ground and do his thing. But there is that big issue there. And the Cats also have Blitzavs, who is the if there was a way he could have 4 different positions in Supercoach, he would be the man who would do it because he's the everywhere man. And he can chop out anybody, or he could even play as the R1 if he really wanted to. So I do like Sam De Conning. I do think he starts as their number 1 ruck in round 0. But I don't want to start him until I'd rather see the couple of games out of him and just see what happens. Your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, he's certainly an interesting one because he was the R1 in this game. So, okay, the role was a tick. And it seems like, he wasn't getting a huge share of the ruck contest, really, because they were happy to let Neil do a bit of rucking in the forward line when it went down there. And then, sort of Blitzarv's chopping him out. And, he is a backman, before becoming a ruckman, so he can play down back and sort of fill in a hole there. I think, it's just really tough with so much uncertainty around him. And the thing is, though, the defensive value options are all tough. So it might be one that, if this round 0 game goes ahead and he comes out and looks good with I'd probably like to see more than the 50% ruck contests he attended in this game. If it's up around 60, 70%, he can probably go, sort of in the 90s, in his first few. He's got Reedy first up. But then, a big risk. I think they'll definitely bring in Stanley. Chris Scott sort of pretty much, he pretty much gave it away in a pre-match presser. He said, Gawn, we're not just going to, let Gawn do his thing. We're going to try a few different things. So, I think it's hard. Can he make you enough cash, up to his buy, and then you offload him before that Gawn game if Stanley comes back? But he's just one to watch, but certainly just so much risk with him.
Yeah, his break even comes in at 67, so he really needs to get close to that 100 mark. And then if he's getting that, he becomes kind of nearly a keeper option anyway. So it is really difficult in that ruck role. There's no reason why he couldn't do it. But I would. He's the sort of guy I'd rather just watch rounds, even if he goes berserk in sort of round 0. I'd rather just sort of see how it plays out because they've got the D's in round 4. So I feel like he plays maybe ruck 1, round 0, 1, 2. We get a bit of a price spike out of him. But I would rather pay 30K more for him. Let him miss the Melbourne game if that's the case, or play defense, see how he goes. The only thing would be if he scores absolutely off the charts in round 0. So if he puts up like a 130, 140, then all of a sudden, from a cash point of view, we probably have to pick him. But if it's anything, even if it's 100, I feel like I personally can let it go and just have a look and see how that formulates over the first few weeks. Because after that, and the Crows, he's got his brother in a game, Briggsy, Sweet, English, Flynn. There's a lead in as we head towards the buys where there's some favourable ruck matchups.
Yeah, it's just really that Melbourne matchup, and I mean, it's bad enough that he even has to come up against Gawn. Like, I think he'll get slaughtered by Gawn, and he could put up, even if he is solo rucking in that game, he's probably not going to post a very good score. And then you add in the fact that, Reece Stanley, if he comes back in, Sam De Koning, his scoring is seriously capped if he's not, a clear number 1 ruck and he is playing key defense. And then, who knows what will happen because, Reece Stanley's not the most amazing ruckman, but he's been getting picked for years. So, Scotty seems to love him, and he does, he competes hard in there. So if Stanley comes back for one game, what's to say he won't hang around for a bit and and then DeConning, you're left with someone who's not making cash and someone who's not scoring anywhere near the top of the line. So it just becomes a very failed pick. So fraught with risk, but I guess one to watch if the round 0 game goes ahead, and then make a risk calculated decision based on that.
Yeah, for sure. One guy that's in nearly everyone's team, not mine, but nearly everybody else's team, is the new recruit Bailey Smith, 62% own. The hard thing is we haven't seen what's going on. We hopefully will get to see it in round 0. He is the one which is the biggest asterisk if the game gets moved, because we want the free hit to have a look at him, make sure he's fully fit, going through, doing what he needs to do. And I feel like if he plays enough game time and goes, 85, no problems. Bailey Smith will be in my team and everybody's team by then. The issue is if then that game gets moved and we have to go in blind, then I've got a few more questions, because I just need to see it. It's been a long time since he's played footy, and we know what he can do, but I do have some question marks. I'm sure he's in your side, mate. I don't know if you share any of the same concerns, but what are your thoughts on Bailey?
Yeah, he is in my side. And for a lot of the preseason, I was sort of, scoffing at the people that were saying, have a bit of concern over Bailey Smith. He's not an automatic, selection. And I was thinking, what are these guys on about? But the closer we get to the season, the more I do wonder about exactly what his management back from an ACL injury looks like. Is he going to be, getting a huge share of CBAs? Does he spend time on a wing? Does he get, time on ground managed? Does he go to half forward? And yeah, he's one that he's probably the biggest watch out of almost any player from the teams in the round 0 to have a look at, because we'll know what his role is. And it's easy to forget he's not that cheap. He's not like a Caleb Daniel where he's priced at, a 50 or something. From where Bailey Smith is priced at, he still needs to go 95, 90 plus definitely to be a good pick and, to be in line with those top 6 forwards and make enough cash to start him. So I think he's still there for now. And, he's innocent until proven guilty in terms of, I think he's still fine at this stage. But a bit of doubt has crept into my mind, even though I thought for a lot of the preseason, I think a lot of people would have thought this is that he was just a lock. But maybe one to think about with a few question marks over him.
I think most people do. It's just a few of us content creators that have been saying it, and most people are like, no, it's Bailey Smith. And maybe just the fact that he's so out there, Instagram, and he's just, everybody loves him and stuff, and kind of got blinkers on to go, well, actually, we got to take the footy part from it. And how do players usually return from ACLs? And his biggest strength is his running capacity. And, I need to see it in action. And would I rather just pay again 30K more for him after his bye? If, he comes out and goes, puts up 3 tons in a row? Yeah, probably. Because then it's just like, well, have I missed that much? Because probably the guy I'm picking over him might be doing similar anyway. And then I've just got to sort of rejig to get him in. I still feel like I'll own him at some point. That's not a problem. I just need to see how he kicks off the start of the year. That's just my sort of word of warning for the community.
Yeah, and it's I think as well, just because there's a few more value options in the forward line started to present themselves, and also the F1 and F2, Rankin and Horn Francis have both looked amazing. So there is forward options. It sort of seemed like at one point, there wasn't that many forward. Everyone was going to have the same forward lines, but there are different ways you can go with it. And so, it's a big risk fading him just because of his ownership percentage. So it's, if he does get off to a hot start and then you're playing catch up, and, we've seen he's a jet of the comp, and he has the potential, if he gets the right role, he's going to burn you. But it's just one to, just keep a bit of doubt in the back of your mind. I'm not saying, take him out of your team or anything. He's still in my team, but just consider him, because he's not as black and white as we once thought.
Yeah, for me, keep him in your team. It's the only chance I've got to join Joven as a winner, and hopefully he stinks it up and I get a leg up on everybody else. That's what I'm hanging my hat on at the moment. The guy that was the second most owned player at Geelong, and came crashing down with his ownership was Max Holmes. Like everybody was owning Max Holmes in their defense. I was actually surprised how hot he was with the community, because he does have that early buy, and it's sort of hard to manage with the defense. But still found the ball, no problems, but did have quite a few clangers on the other night against the Bombers, and his 78 DT, which would normally probably be around that 90 Supercoach, only came out as a 51. So I think a few people jumped off there, which is kind of interesting because, his stat lines was everything I'd probably want from a Max Holmes game. He's not a huge accumulator. He is that sort of 20 to 25 guy who usually uses it well, but off night with his disposal, and it happens. But I was kind of surprised how many people sort of jumped off, and who were on to start off with, and then how many jumped off.
Yeah, it's funny. Maybe the score just made a few people think about, he does actually have an early buy and he's not amazing. You probably shouldn't really be looking at premium scores too much as a general Supercoach player in the off season. These premiums, they're not busting themselves to try and get as many touches or play as well as they can. Especially a guy like Max Holmes, who he's had some soft tissue injuries as well. He just wants to get through this game, I mean, I wasn't that keen on picking him. The premiums, and especially in defense, we're pretty heavy on. Probably going to start a few value guys on that round 3 buy, so he's hard to manage down there. But I think as a target throughout the rest of the season, coming off his buy, and if you try and get him at mid-season, he should go very well again. He's still young, he's got a good role, and he was fine in this game. I don't care if he gets a 50 in preseason. So not worried about Max Holmes at all.
Yeah, I wrote about him last year. I was sort of hanging my hat on that one and it's the guy that could break out and be a really good pick for us. So I've got to kind of see if I can back that up with somebody this season. But I do like him. If it wasn't for the early buy, I'd be in my team. If the buy gets moved, I'd be seriously considering him for my side. So it's one I'm watching closely, not because nothing he needs to do. It's just I don't want the extra round 3 buy player. But if that gets removed, I'd be all over Max Holmes.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys that could be the big beneficiary of no round 0 game, and at that point, you're not losing out on the points that you would have to a similar premium that plays all of the games in the regular season. If he doesn't have a buy, there's no reason you can't pick him as a D2, D3, and a bit of value there. He should be around the top 6 to 8 defender mark and have a really awesome season. So he could be the big beneficiary along with some other, Lions premiums if that game does get cancelled.
From the rest of it, there's not too many to talk about. Tom Stewart, for a guy who now his age, it's just kind of like, I was kind of surprised he just went back to doing Tom Stewart things at halfback, and that he was just played out the majority of the game, and he's just an absolute champion player. So for those people who are like, could I still go Tom Stewart? Absolutely, you could. I think there's potentially better options this year in defense, but the hard thing is, he always has that sort of injury affected game, which can be frustrating. But when we know what do we get from a scoring point of view, and you only have to kind of look at the run home, ignoring the round 24 game, which was against West Coast, which again we should have probably seen that coming with Geelong managing some players and the way that they did things. But if I just go through these scores after his bye last year, 107, 97, 115, 105, 121, 139, 120, 76, and 104. Like absolute super premium numbers for a defender. No reason why he can't continue to do that. And the fact that they've brought in an extra midfielder means if he's at half back, he's scoring and he'll continue to have that role.
Yeah, and we know when he gets that role, and probably the caveat is when he doesn't get tagged either in that role, he scores, pretty much at will. One of the great contested marks in our game, so many intercept marking opportunities, and uses the ball ridiculously well. So, just a really gun Supercoach player, and could prove relevant at some point in this season, I think.
Again, another one which would be interesting to see if the game was to be moved, how his ownership percentage changes once again. And that also, I think, relates to, say, your Myers and Cameron. I think there's enough for the starting point of view, but two guys just to continue to have in your back of your mind throughout the season, especially on that run home. Like when we're trying to upgrade our teams, and maybe you're looking for an F6 or a flex position, depending on sort of how things formulate. That run home with the Cats, Geelong kick a lot of goals. Now, Cameron's more the likely to get rested at different points, especially when they're playing the Tigers. But say Brian Myers, I would expect, as long as he's fit and healthy, I feel like he'll make an appearance in my team at some point throughout the season.
Yeah, he looked great again. Brian Myers seems to just go to strength to strength. He's found his niche, and he's an awesome field kick. They're looking to get the ball to him, anywhere between sort of, 50 to 80 meters from goal, because he's so damaging. So it's a unique role, not one that we usually target in a Supercoach sense, but one that, especially if Geelong have a few, it's one to look at the matchups. If they've got a few easier games in a row where outside players are going to score well and the Cat's going to be on top, he is definitely an option at the right point in the season.
Yeah, so for people who haven't seen it, so after Geelong's bye, which is the annoying one, round 16, last bye, where we're usually trying to upgrade, but after that, they play my boys, the Tigers, down at Geelong. They've got the Giants, St Kilda down at Geelong, North Melbourne, Port down at Geelong, Essendon down at Geelong, the Swans, which will be the tough one in Sydney, and then they get the Tigers again. So from a Supercoach perspective, they should feast on the two Richmond games. North Melbourne might, hopefully they continue to improve for their sake, but they're, still have some young bodies who might continue to slow down. The Saints and the Bombers at home, we know the Bombers usually drop off second half of the year too. So there's some very friendly games, especially down at the Cattery. So that's why I'm looking at, in the back of my mind, I'll be watching these Geelong players very closely as we get into that part of the season.
Yeah, just one to think about, keep in the back of your mind.
All right, the Bombers played well. Won't kick that straight ever again, but credit, they did it and they got a win, and I guess build a little bit of confidence going through the season. It's probably been I'd say it's been a while since they've won down there, but they never play down there, so it's a good opportunity. They will actually get the chance to play down at the Cattery later in the year. Some relevant Supercoach players, again from a premium point of view. Nick Martin was one that we all loved last season. Complete change of role this year, but it seemed to make absolutely no difference to him. Kicked the ball 19 times out of his 22 touches, took marks linking up on the wing, half forward, and kicked the two bananas. Fantastic player. Not one I'm sort of leaning towards. Maybe if he didn't have the bye, I might be a little bit more interested, but I can't seem to warm to him. But in saying that, I'll be watching him closely, because if he continues to put out massive scores, it'll be hard to ignore.
Yeah, I think it's just there's not a lot of value from where he's priced at. He was at his best last year when he had that, free license to roam around the back line and take kick-ins and do whatever he wanted. He's still a very good AFL player, and he is going to find a way to, sort of defy. He sort of found himself on a wing, half forward sort of role where he's a bit more dangerous and can, kick goals in this game. And so, yeah, I think he'd still be good, but probably, from a starting perspective, and even trading into him, it's not really the role where it's going to produce consistent scoring necessarily. Martin could buck the trend because he is that good. He's fit and he's very clever at how he finds the ball, but yeah, not a lot of interest in him from me with this current role.
Yeah, for sure. Zach Merritt. If you're going to pick him, pick him. If you're not, that shouldn't change anything for it. They're like some of these premos just going through the motions at this time of the year. The only thing is obviously the early buy. So for me, it's an avoid, and hopefully, I don't see Zachy going through the roof where it's a case where he's going to get out of reach. Hopefully, he goes back to a couple of seasons ago where he starts slow and we can hopefully get him at 550, but he's been a little bit more consistent of recent times ever since he became captain. So you're probably going to have to pay for what he's worth, but don't let that put you off. The thing with the Bombers is the rookie players, and there are a few of them. Elijah Sardis did everything he could to continue to be a big pick for our teams. 31 touches, absolutely contested beast in there, and there is even a potential possibility that even if Darcy Parish was fit, they might even go Sardis in this current form.
Yeah, and he's just an absolute workhorse. There's been big raps on him. He had massive junior numbers. He's just one of those guys that knows how to find the ball, and his ball use isn't amazing, but it's improved a lot. He's come a long way in his time in the system. They've talked a lot about he's just worked so hard to get himself ready and prepared to make an impact at AFL level. And I think you can just look at the eye test and he passes. He's ready to go. He's the future of this midfield, really, a top 5 pick that the Bombers have been screaming out for, someone that can win, a lot of contested ball and, win clearances. I think he is ready to go and just, almost a lock for our Supercoach teams. Doesn't matter too much about the buy. He's going to make a lot of cash and he's got a really good role. So, yeah, thumbs up for Sardis, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the easy one of these rookie picks, and I'm more interested to get your opinion on the next 3 that we're going to talk about. So lock in Sardis, 48% of teams. Again, that should pump it up a little bit higher. There's actually 2 guys who are actually higher in ownership, and this is the ones which I'm surprised there's not more questions about. Maybe one of them because of the short of defensive options, but that is Zach Reid, 51%. He did burn us last year. But passed the eye test, got through the game, which was the most important thing. And the Bombers really don't have another option as that second key defender with Ben Mackay and him, because we know they would prefer to play Ridley as the third guy. Even Redmond coming back in, they don't really want Redmond to play key defender. So from that point of view, he's going to play as long as he's fit. But I don't know if it's a guy that I'd want necessarily on field. I'd rather just have him there as a D7 guy making cash.
Yeah, spot on. I wouldn't be that comfortable starting him on field. You don't want these key defenders that aren't, the only key defenders you really want is like a McGovern, where he's got the license to take kick-ins and intercept mark, peel off his man. Zach Reid's going to be playing a lot of lockdown. He's going to score quite a few points when, the ball is just getting chipped around in Essendon's backline, and he got involved in that. He's a skillful player for a big fella. He's got a good kick on him. I think he's got really good job security. The only reason he hasn't played more for Essendon is just his body's let him down. But at his price, we're not really worried about that. We just need him to play as many games as he can. And I think in defence, where we are starved a bit for rookie options, he's one to pick. Yeah, probably not on field, but yeah, just D7 or D8, lock him away, I think, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. The other guy in defence, Jackson Pryor, 5% of teams has crossed over from the Lions. Was there more because I feel like Redmond not being there. But in saying that, the Bombers have lost Heppel, who is retired now. Laverty is on the outer. So there is potentially a position for the Bombers to have somebody at that bench position who's going to rotate on as that 7th defender. And, they did want to get him into the club. It's not the worst idea. 169K is the problem. We do get to, if their game is more likely to go ahead than the Brisbane and Geelong game, so we do get to have a look at him. We expect him to play in that first round 0. So one to definitely watch. What did you think of Jackson Pryor?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fine. It probably comes down to a lot what other rookie options we have. If, because I think he is an option to start at D6, but only if there's some other guys that miss out. Like I think I'd probably just rather save a bit of cash and go, say, a James Leake on field. If he comes out and has a bit of a midfield role for the Giants, and, there's an O'Connell floating around at the Saints. Yeah, we've got Reid as well. Bo Allen, even though he scored terribly, should still be, he'll get a game in round 1. Definitely don't want him on field. But yeah, it's just probably one to watch. I think this is sort of what he's going to do, maybe, 60s to 70s. And, that's probably what we're going to get out of him in round 0. Just check that he has the role. But yeah, probably more one to see if there's a cheaper option. I'd be happy just shaving the cash and, spend that elsewhere, because he's not going to be a world beater by any means, but, structure wise, if these other guys don't get up, you might just be forced to start him at D6.
If that was the case, say the other guys were, or even if the other guys were there, but from a Essendon structure, they've gone, yep, everyone's fit, but we've still got Jackson Pryor starting on the bench and coming on. Is there a score that he needs to score for you to go, oh, I need to start this guy?
Yeah, I think if he went like 80 plus, if he went 80 plus, I'd be pretty keen to just, because we know that's banked into his cash gen now. So I think, if he's 80 plus and has got that good role, that just gives him a nice little, tick along, because I don't have any confidence in, even if those other guys are named, like a Leak or Bo Allen was 90 points off an 80 plus. So, I think, that's enough to see him into my team. But yeah, if he's just going around those 60s, 70s, and just doing that week on week, you can probably miss him. He's not gonna burn you too much as long as you got someone else playing down there instead of him.
Yeah, I was going to say 75, and I can see it happening now. He's probably going to score what he did the other day and score like a 69. And all of a sudden, we're like, God, is it? And, which way do I want to go? And you can just see it happening now. So, yeah, like if he's a warm body and he's playing and he looks good, I think from the eye test point of view, it's not like he's a rookie. He's been in the system now, crossing over from the Lions, but. Yeah, it all kind of depends on what that first score is and what other options we do have there. Isaac Kako, mate. I've had so many messages about him. The 97, brilliant game, kicked the 4 goals. Exactly what the Bombers need down in the forward line. But 150K, and he is a small forward. We know small forwards. We've had them all in the past in years where we haven't had many options. Rochelle being the best example of this. 100 one week, 20 the next. Is Kako in your team at the moment? And what are your thoughts on him?
No, he's not in my team at the moment. And I think the only way that would change is if he came out and scored another 100 or a 95 in round 0. I think that, small forward role, it's probably the worst role you can possibly have in Supercoach, where, it's just so volatile and there's no easy ball. You've got the hardest role. You don't have easy access to tackles, even though, these guys are, expected to get tackles. It's hard to get tackles down there. You don't have easy access to marks. You've got a defender right on you. You're going to rely on goals a lot. Kako, he's going to be an awesome player from an AFL sense, but you just have to look back at what, Nick Watson did last year. He had a great, AFL season, but he was never really particularly Supercoach relevant for us. And, I think Kako is going to be fairly similar in that, he's going to struggle to put consistent scores together. And, if he starts off, if he comes out, in round 1 and drops, he could easily just, have a 10 disposal, no goal game. And then, you've really limited your cash gen. So he's not one that I'm starting with, but you can have a look in round 0. And if he has a big score baked into his price, you maybe consider him, but still it's just a really bad role.
It's a great example that you've given with Nick Watson. So Watson was 40K more expensive, so you've got to take that into account. But he started at 190, first game up 26. No surprise, small forward rookie, always going to probably struggle maybe that first game. So he goes 26, 56, 72, and then he missed some games, comes back another 26, 70, and then 46. By then, he's only put 50,000 on his money. He did start to get on a roll there and he put up an 80 and 89, a 47, an 82 and 98. So at that sort of position, he put an extra 100K on his spot over those sort of 4 or 5 weeks. So Kako in that situation would need to go, that's 4, 5, 6 weeks where he's probably got at least 4 scores of 80 plus to really get the benefit out of him. So if you are in that situation where you think and you're confident, and 66% of teams have him in at the moment, so they're all willing to sort of bank it. But again, if it's that slow start and if he's only got a 20 or a 30 that first week, it's going to be a slow burn, and you can potentially get a couple of good scores out of him before he's going to go make cash. And I know some people did that last year. Like, here's a guy who, yeah, he's break even, still manageable, where I can pick my moment to bring him in if need be. Say I'm trading somebody down who's really fattened out as a cow, and then maybe get on him. But then at any given point, these small forwards can put in a really poor score. So you have to be mindful of that. And there's plenty of other examples we have seen in regards to these guys. So the other one, again, like Cody Waitman. So again, another player that plays quite similar. And back there in his first season, no surprise, we had a similar start. So his difference was, if I go back to where was he, 2020, he had the 63 first game, and he was priced at 144. So pretty similar to Kako there. And then his next 2 weeks, bang, 14 and 20. And this is the life of a small forward. So if that sort of happens to Kako, you're in a world of hurt. Waitman sort of the following year, you start obviously second, third year players, they continue to work on their body of that. And then Waitman started with a lot more consistency and was able to put up sort of those 70s, 80s, 90s in a row, but still had a couple of games there was, 28, 40, 42. So, yeah, I think that's as much warning as we can give the public. If he comes out that first game and it's 80 plus, and especially if it's 80 plus and there's not many goals. So if it's a like 1 goal and he's had a couple of goal assists and he still finds an 80, then 100% I'm happy to jump on with everybody else. Not a problem. And I'm sure, you'd be probably having a hard look at that too, Jove. But if it's a case where we kicked 5 goals and he's only scored a 70 or an 80, players aren't kicking 5 goals every week. So you've got to be mindful of where his points have come from.
Yeah. It's just never a role. Like, I think of it, you sort of got to think about, they are rookie price, but you're sort of picking every player. You want job security and a good role. And, I would never pick a small forward as a premium. So if I can avoid picking a small forward as a rookie and there's other guys with good, good job security, I think his job security in terms of his need in the Essendon side is really good. Like, he's safe. He's not going to get dropped, early on. They'll give him an extended run, but his access to points is really what limits him as a selection, and it's just not one that I'd be super interested in.
No, and I think that's one that no problems if you're going to start him, but that round 0 game, it means everything, and it'd be interesting to see sort of how he goes because slippery conditions up there in the Gold Coast. It's going to be a tough one for him first up, so it'd be interesting if he does score poorly, how many people drop off, or if he does go well, and then how much of the community are on board with that. The last bomber that needs to be mentioned, and I know my good mate Abs is always hot on this guy, and that is Jordan Ridley. 1% of teams, 552. And the only reason I bring him up, because I know a couple other people have also messaged me about this, is Ridley a guy, if he scored really well in that first game, could you potentially own him for the first few weeks up until his bye to then flip him to Holmes, Zorko, one of these guys who has got that round 3 guy, by just the fact that, because we know Ridley when he's on the park, he is actually a really good scorer. The problem is he's never on the park, and you only have to look at last year when he missed the first half of the season. He comes back, and his first 3 scores back from injury were 162, 111, 112. He even finishes the year, he's got the 129, the 127, the 102, and then gets injured again. So the scoring has never been a problem for Jordan Ridley, but how many games could you play him? So I don't mind the one trade in this situation. I did it last year, and I'm looking at something again this year. Is there a player that I can sort of start and maybe get a cash rise out, maybe get points on field, and then move them to someone? But at the same time, there's a huge risk, huge warning with Ridley, because he's the sort of guy that could get you a 20 or 30 because he goes off injured. The flex does cover that as well. So we do have a little bit of a backup, but I thought I should mention him. Would love to get your opinion on that sort of play.
Yeah, I love Ridley as a player. I think it's sort of hard to pick him as where he's priced at. Sort of hard to pick him as a guy that you would like start and then plan to trade out, because he's already, fairly expensive. So you're not going to get an amazing cash rise out of him. And even if you do get him, like, he would have to go really big to get enough cash to make it sort of worth, cashing out at his buy. If he's going that well at that point, why wouldn't you just keep him? Like, he is almost good enough. I know his body's extremely fragile, and I don't know what goes on over there at Essendon, medical staff, but he's certainly an injury risk. But you've got the flex to cover for if he puts up a stinker on field. I sort of feel like if you get to that point, it comes to his buy, and he has been going at, if he gets off to a hot start, he could go 115. Probably not going to want to, catch him in. It's sort of like, yeah, why not just ride with him? So it's probably not really a plan that I'd, go into the season with, because yeah, you'd sort of only really want to trade him out if he's not going amazingly, and then at that point he hasn't made you a lot of cash. It's sort of just a bit of a nothing pick. I like that people are getting creative, but it's probably just not something that I would do, in the game. It's just not how I go about it usually.
Yeah, if I feel like it's like, say as a Hobbs, for example, is the better price point for that, but I just don't like the role as much. But if it was like Ridley was that much cheaper and you could see the fact that he could put 2 good games on, I was kind of looking at that for a couple of teams, like if there was sort of a forward that could get a good run. Like, for example, Carlton start in the first 6 weeks. And, you got Richmond, West Coast and North. And if Kernell was fit or Harry Mackay was fit, I was more willing to sit there and suggest that because there's going to be a lot of goals kicked for the Blues in that point of view. So I get it in these couple chats I've had because we know what he can do. But as you said, the price this year, it's not like he's coming in at 450 and he's 550 for a reason, because he did score well in those games. It's just unfortunately, it's mixed with a couple of 30s because he got injured. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that's an avoid. But I understand those few people have messaged and asked, and it'll be interesting again if that round 0 game he gets 120, 130, that 1% where a few people are sort of playing around with that idea. Wouldn't surprise me at all if it jumped up to sort of 5, 6, 7%, because people will be like, "Oh, here we go." And if you feel like he could go on a tear, and as we said, go 120 for as many weeks as he can go without getting injured, and then you've got the flex just to cover him when he does go down. Yeah, it's not the worst play in the world, but there are other options we do have in defense this year.
Yeah, I think if you're bullish on him, you can pick him to, be a top liner, attempted keeper. His body might not hold up, but you never know. And, even if he gets to that point, I know a lot of us started Elliot Yeo last year, and he was a good pick, and then he got injured, and then you traded him. It's not the worst, case scenario. Ridley, he has a little bit of value where he's priced at. He's probably, he's got a good role. He's not going to be playing any lockdown defense. We've seen him before score really well in this role, so I don't mind it. You've got to, you might have to take a bit of a punt and, be prepared to, cop, a random low score. But we got best 18 early on, and then flex covering for him after that. So if you are bullish, I wouldn't talk you out of it.
I feel like it's that 80K, 100K too dear, because the ones also that have been messaging me about this is the couple of people who did start Jeremy McGovern last year and absolutely paid off because so much ball went through him. Well done to those people who did start him. Like that's an unbelievable pick last season. And, he starts the year 109, 144, 120, 113. And then you're just flying straight away. You'd made 80K and you've got a guy that's averaging 120 playing in your defense. And then because of that previous injury history, not too many people were willing to jump on. And then it got to that stage where, he did get injured and miss games, but by then you'd made cash off him, you traded him out, and you haven't burnt the extra trade that others have who may have traded him in. So, I feel like if Ridley was that price, it's a much easier one to swallow because it doesn't take much to make that 80 to 100K. And realistically, with a rookie, we want minimum 100. If they're making 150 plus, even better. But that's the first thing. 100K is what we're wanting from a player. As a starting point, and McGovern did that for the owners last year, and I don't think Ridley can go from 550 to 650, but if he was 470, definitely would have got himself up to 570, 580 if he played 5, 6, 7 games.
Yeah, just that price point, he'd really have to pop, especially early on in the season, because I think like all the rookies are scoring well, so they're it's even harder at the start of the season for premiums to increase their price. So he would really have to go on like some sort of a tear to make you enough money from that point if you had that plan to trade him. So yeah, it's just a bit tough. He's a bit too close to fully priced for mine. Still a bit of value, but yeah, not enough to really make it a cash generation value play.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think that covers the Bombers enough, and spoke about them for enough for one episode. But yeah, it was good chatting about the Cats as well. Joven, thank you so much for joining me.
No problem, Swizz. It's been a pleasure.
And community, continue to check us out with all our preseason guides. We will be also with the first of the proper season, round 0, and we'll be talking about all that soon, which will feature both the Geelong and the Essendon footy clubs. Thanks, mate. Thanks, community. We'll talk soon. Bye.